What I'm going to do in this little bit of video is walk you through the pseudocode for a bubble search. Line 1 is set up an array called list. This is going to contain the list of items that we want to search through. Note that the list is in ascending order. Line 2 is setting a variable called length to the length of the list. So if we look at the array that we're going to search through at the bottom, we can see that we start at element 0 and we go to element 16, which means there are 17 items in the list we're going to look for. Line 3 is setting the search item. This is going to get input from the user, and what we're going to use is the number 7 to do this calculation. Line 4 is setting up a variable called LB. LB is the lower bound of our array. What that means is the position that we are going to start looking from. So in this particular case, the lower bound is 0 because we are starting at the 0 element for this part of the array. Line 5 is setting the upper bound. This is the last position I want to search. There are 17 things in the list, therefore position 16 is the last in the list. Line 6 is setting up a flag variable called match to false. That means we haven't found a match in our code yet. Line 8 is setting up a while loop. While these two conditions are both correct, it will continue doing line 8 to line 17. This will mean that as I make changes to the upper and lower bounds, I can continue using the same loop. This is for program efficiency. It will loop until either an item is found or until no elements are left to check. The next line, line 9, is setting up something called the midpoint. This is the position of the element in the middle of the list. Because he is the element in the middle and the numbers are in ascending order, it will also be the median value from the list. So if we look at the first line saying set the midpoint to round down of UB, upper bound, minus LB, lower bound, divided by 2 plus the lower bound. So let's do that for our example. So on the first line through, it will say the upper bound is 16, the lower bound is 0, 16 minus 0 is 16, divided by 2 gives me 8. Adding the lower bound will mean I add on 0 again, which will give me the answer 8 still. So that line there, line 9, is working out the middle of my search array. So let's say that I only wanted to search between 6 and 8. So the lower bound would be set at 6 and the upper bound will be set at 8. So upper bound, 8, minus 6, lower bound, gives me 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Plus the original lower bound, which was 6, would mean I was looking at element 7. That is what line 9 is doing as we work our way through the array. Line 10 is looking to see if the value stored in the midpoint of the list midpoint position, is the same as the search. So if the 14 was the number I was looking for, line 11, setting the match to true, would stop the code. Line 12 is looking at a new condition. What would happen if the midpoint value in list is less than the item I'm searching for? So let's say that I'm looking at 21. So if I'm looking for 21 and I'm currently at the midpoint position 14, that would mean I need to search to the right of the array. So what this is going to do is going to change where the lower bound is. So I'm looking for 21. I'm currently at 8. I now need to search between 9 and 16 to find that number I'm after. Therefore, if I move the lower bound from 0 to 19 and then run the code again, it would set me a new median in this position, line 12. That is what line 12 and 13 is trying to do. Okay, so as you can see, the next line, line 14 and 15, what they are trying to do is they are doing the last option available. If the value in the midpoint position isn't 14 and it isn't higher than 14, the value I'm looking for must be lower than 14. So on lines 15, it's setting the new upper bound. So if I am at 14 and I'm looking for 7, I don't have to look between 8 and 16 anymore. So what I need to do is move my upper bound from the 16 down to the one before 8. So if I take 1 away from the midpoint value, which was 8, to get 7, and set that as the new upper bound, I am now searching between 0 and 7. The code is doing the same thing each time now. So now, when I get back to line 9, at line 9, it's now saying set the new midpoint. So my value for the upper bound is now 7. My lower bound is still 0. 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, but it's telling me to round the answer down. So that becomes 3. So my new median value on the second way through the loop is the 3. So I'm now comparing my 7 with the 3. So if we now look at what we have in this position. So I'm searching between 0 and 7. I've guessed 6, but we are looking for 7. So now what I know is I now need to search between 6 and 13 because I know it wasn't the value of 14 because I've already checked that and I'd lowered the bound. So my new bound would be between 4 and 7. So the new bound between 4 and 7 means I'm going to guess 8. Then I would move the upper bound from the 7 to the 8, and I would move and the lower bound would now be at 6. So the only value I can now have is 7. This is the complicated bit because I'm constantly moving the lower bound up and the upper bound down. When I get to a point where I've moved the upper band down and the lower band up to the same cell, I know no value was found that matched what I was after because I haven't changed the match flag to true. Because we are using pseudocode, lines 16 and 17 are ending the blocks of code. Don't forget, in Python, all you need to do is stop the indent for that particular thing to happen. The final block of code is telling the user whether the item was in the list or not. So once it's been all the way through the while loop, it will drop out. If anywhere in your while loop the match is set to true, you know you've found the item. If anywhere in the while loop you didn't set match to true, so it is still false, you know you haven't found the item.